Yo, what's going on guys? Today I wanted to make a video on my thoughts on all the new items in the Cutting Edge Warbond. Now in proper YouTuber fashion, we will be doing this tier list style, as it's also just easiest to organize my thoughts on all these items this way. Now keep in mind that these are my opinions on what I've experienced so far. I have a certain playstyle and I use certain weapons to fit my own builds. For example, if I have a single target primary, then my support weapon will help me mob, and vice versa. So before we get into it, if you enjoy this video, all I ask is you drop a like on it, as that will help it spread to all the other Helldivers fighting against treasonous bugs and bots. So let's dive right in. Now to start off this video, I'm going to quickly explain where I put all the base game weapons. I'm not going to get detailed at all, and there will be timestamps in the video if you want to skip around this video to get to the Cutting Edge Warbond. So I have the Breaker and the Scorcher up in S tier. I've always thought the Scorcher was better than the Breaker. It just takes a while to unlock this gun, so I think a lot of people didn't come to that conclusion yet. We have the best sidearm, the little Uzi, because that thing is amazing. In A tier, we have the best assault rifle in the game, the SMG. Then the other shotguns, the Slugger, the Punisher. Great options right now. And then a little diligence right here. This is very good if you want to take on that long range playstyle. I like the revolver. I think it's the second best sidearm in the game because it actually has medium armor penetration. In B tier, we pretty much just have the rest of the shotguns. All these guns are useful, but they aren't really anything special at this moment. And then I just threw the last secondary up into B tier too because it's fine. In C tier, we have every other assault rifle in the game, and then we have the paid for SMG. And with that out of the way, whether you agree or disagree, let's get into the Cutting Edge Warbond. So the first gun we're going to be covering is the Plasma Punisher. Now the Plasma Punisher is a variant of the Punisher, obviously, but it shoots plasma rounds, similar to how the Scorcher is a plasma assault rifle. Now you would think that I would be comparing it to the Punisher itself, but no, we actually are just going to be comparing this to the Scorcher. So I want to take note that this has 100 damage on it, and if we look at the Scorcher, it also has 100 damage on it. And both of these guns, when they impact, they set off another little explosion, which is very strong because it can actually deal damage to heavy armored enemies. And I'll be playing some clips in the background of me killing a tank with this gun, because you can also kill tanks with the Scorcher. And that's basically just because the explosive damage essentially kind of goes around the heavy armor in a sense. You can also deal damage to chargers with these weapons. And let's just go ahead and talk about the pros and cons between the Scorcher and the Punisher, and essentially why I think this is just a worse Scorcher, unfortunately. Now it does have one better thing on it than the Scorcher, but first let's talk about all the cons. So if we just pull up the Scorcher card, you'll see that this has 15 in the mag and a 250 fire rate, and when we compare this to the Punisher, this only has 8 in the mag, which is almost half, and it has an 80 fire rate. On top of that, the Punisher variant of this gun can really only be used from close range, and the way the bullets fire, they kind of arc, so it's a lot harder to fire. It can only be used from close range. It has about half the magazine, less fire rate, and they do about the same damage. Now, the only pro I could truly find with the Punisher Plasma, which is a pretty good pro, I'm not gonna lie, is that it has a much higher splash radius on that exploding round. So if you shoot a group of enemies with the Punisher variant of the Plasma tier weapons, then you can actually take out, you know, a group of enemies rather than single target. Now, the Scorcher will do some splash damage to enemies nearby, but they have to be much closer. I'm pretty sure the splash radius on the Punisher variant is much bigger. So for me personally, I put the Punisher Plasma somewhere around the top of A tier. I really honestly do think it's just a downgrade of the Scorcher. This is the gun I've used the most from this new Warbond so far, and I just found myself switching back to the Scorcher because in all the situations that I want this, I just feel the Scorcher is pretty much better in nearly every way, except for that one, which was the splash radius. And honestly, I would like to see the Punisher Plasma get just a very small buff, and the very small buff I would like to see is sticking maybe about 50 extra base damage onto this gun. So number one, I don't think this would be a crazy buff because it's really that explosive round that can deal damage to heavy armored units. So if you buff the base damage of this gun, then it wouldn't really affect its usage against heavy armored units. What it would affect its usage on is small enemies. So I noticed that a lot of times when I shoot a little enemy, like maybe the warrior, for example, that it doesn't really clean them up in one shot. Whereas the actual Punisher and the actual Slugger will take out warriors in one shot. And the other thing is that this gun doesn't reload like the Punisher or the Slugger. You can't just shoot and reload it instantly. And that is a second possible buff that I think would make this gun a lot better, is if I could literally just shoot, reload, shoot, reload, shoot, reload, go through all the ammo, and then maybe it had 60 bullets comparable to these two. I do think they need to do something to this gun, just because I do think it is a strict downgrade of the Scorcher. I would much rather it be a side grade rather than a downgrade. Now, if this did 150 base damage, I do believe it would kill warriors in one shot. And again, I don't think it would be overpowered versus heavy enemies. I don't think it needs both those buffs, but at least one of them. Now let's go ahead and talk about the Sickle, the new laser assault rifle, and why this is probably secretly my favorite gun from this Warbond. And that is mainly just in how dang fun it is to shoot this gun. Now, it says 55 damage on it. If we compare it to the Liberator, this also says 55 damage on it. The Liberator has a 640 fire rate, and the Sickle has a 750 fire rate. On top of that, the Liberator has about 45 in the magazine, but the Sickle feels like it could shoot probably 100 bullets or 90, like at least double before you need to reload it or before you need to stop shooting to let that coil cool down. And then on top of that, the Sickle can technically have infinite ammo. If you never overheat a coil, then you don't need to reload and you don't need to go searching for supplies. This is pretty much strictly an upgrade of the Liberator, and it feels amazing. Now, honestly, one tip I'll give you guys is that the reload speed of the Sickle is very fast. Technically, if you want to have infinite ammo on this gun, it has 6 coils, which means you could burn 5 coils. You could just force yourself to completely mow down all the enemies, keep reloading, which is very fast, mow down some more enemies, reload again, more enemies, reload again, until you get through 5 coils, and just make sure you don't go through that last coil. Honestly, think about that. Like, think about the options you have with this gun. On top of that, you would probably pick up another ammo pack by then. So honestly, don't be afraid to reload this gun. Don't fall into the trap that, ooh, I gotta let it cool off. Because no, you don't. Technically, you don't have to let it cool off until you get down to that last coil. And like I said, it's honestly just really fun to shoot. It feels very powerful, and it proves just the slight adjustments we could see to the normal Liberator and the normal tier of assault rifles that could just make them much more powerful. I honestly want to stick the Sickle above the Punisher Plasma, possibly into S tier. Now, personally, I'm a little bit timid on putting this into S tier, but it's like I said, I think it depends on your build. If you want a high single damage weapon, like the Scorcher, for example, or even the Breaker at that point, then make sure you bring a support weapon to mob with. But if your support weapon is like the recoilless rifle, for example, and you're just using that support weapon to take out chargers, to take out Bile Titans, then a gun like the Sickle is amazing for shooting down swarms, shooting down hunters, shooting down warriors, shooting down all the little guys, and just wasting through ammo. It's obviously not as strong as a Stalwart, for example, but it is very powerful, and I think in the right build, it could shine as an S tier, but I'm not sure about that, and that's actually not my playstyle, so I'm more inclined to put it into A tier. However, it finally beats the Defender for the best assault rifle in the game, because this actually has a really nice scope on it. You can crouch and get those bullets, like the recoil down. You could also wear that recoil armor, by the way. All right, moving on, and let's talk about the Blitzer. Now, I think this was the most anticipated gun from this Warbond because it was gonna be the baby brother to the Arc Thrower. And let's just go ahead and compare this to the Arc Thrower. So the Blitzer says it has 250 damage on it per shot, and it has a 30 fire rate. Now, I am an Arc Thrower main. You guys probably know me from my Arc Thrower videos. I posted 2 of them that got a lot of views. And just from shooting this gun and the feeling of it, I think it does the same amount of damage as an Arc Thrower. But unfortunately, the specific damage of the Arc Thrower was not what made it powerful. The 2 things that make the Arc Thrower powerful is, number 1, it ignores heavy armor and you can deal damage to heavy armor units with it. Number 2, it was the fire rate of the Arc Thrower. thrower, because you didn't actually have to full charge the arc thrower every time. And if you learn how to fast fire it, you can get out so many arcs. You can mob with it, you can deal damage to heavy armored units with it in the meantime, and that's what makes that gun so powerful. And that is the two things that this gun is lacking. If we just pull up a random gun like the Punisher Plasma, the Slugger, these have 80 fire rate, and the Arc Blitzer has 30, which is less than half the fire rate of these weapons. This thing feels so slow to shoot. On top of that, the range of this gun feels like a double barrel sawed off shotgun, like you're gonna be using this at very close range. And the third thing is the damage of it. It does 250 damage, whereas if we compare that to the Slugger actually does 280 damage. Honestly, I think if the fire rate were to stay this slow, it would need to do the damage a lot closer to the Punisher, probably somewhere between the Slugger and the Punisher, or it could keep the same damage, but it could have probably nearly double the fire rate. This thing honestly feels so slow to shoot. It honestly just feels really bad in my opinion. Now, I'm honestly going to put it in C tier, and that's just because of what I've experienced with it so far. I'm not saying there's no secret to this gun out there. I'm sure YouTube videos will pop up of people loving this gun, but in my opinion, it just feels really bad to shoot. And for me personally, I just have to put it into the C tier. Next, let's talk about the LAS 7 Dagger. Now, we only have 4 secondaries in this game, and let's talk about where this fits into it. Now, personally, the LAS Dagger feels a little bit underwhelming. I know a lot of people were excited for this gun as well, but for me personally, it's not going to replace the Redeemer. What's so amazing about your secondary weapon is you can pull it out in a time of need and spray down 3 hunters, but the LAS Dagger probably has more comparable damage to the Peacemaker, where it just doesn't feel like it sprays down enemies that fast, even little enemies. But the great pro of this weapon is that it technically has infinite ammo if you don't overheat it, and I think that definitely has some utility depending on your build once again. And I just think there isn't much more to say about that, so I think it's slightly better than the Peacemaker since it feels comparable damage wise, but it does have that infinite ammo potential where you can swap into it, get some shots off, swap back to your primary, reload, and then when you swap back to this, it'll be good to go again. Now, I want to just quickly move on from that and talk about the stun grenade. The stun grenade is amazing. And what this says is it temporarily stuns all targets within the effective radius, and big underline under the word all. This thing stuns Bile Titans. Now, someone in the comment section down below tell me if I'm wrong, but I actually couldn't stun a tank with this. So that is the single enemy I found that I couldn't stun with it. Now, maybe the tank, it's because it has a gun. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it stops moving, but it technically doesn't stop shooting. I'm not sure. I actually haven't used this that much against bots, but when I did, I felt like it was stunning the normal bots. It's hard to say. However, against bugs and against all other content in this game, this stun grenade is amazing. From what I've used from it, instant S tier. I think that this grenade has like nearly infinite potential. Now, when I saw this grenade teased, I was actually doubtful about it. I thought it would end up being like another smoke grenade where maybe it would have a niche use, but honestly, when I unlocked this grenade, it's probably my favorite item. I started wearing the grenade armor and I started running supply pack. So I've just been trying to chuck as many of these as possible, especially on those new defend missions, because it is so dang handy. And when I say this thing stuns Bile Titans, I mean, like, it is so clutch. Like, it will literally interrupt its spitting attack. So if you see a Bile Titan wind up for a spit, you could throw this at it, and even if it starts spitting, it'll interrupt it halfway. Meaning, as long as you dodge the initial hit of it, you can stun it halfway, and then, you know, get yourself ready to throw a stratagem out. You can even throw another stun grenade after that and chain it to make sure it gets stuck inside that stratagem, and you definitely take it out. But if you use grenade armor, or if you don't need the grenade armor if you bring the supply pack, by the way, and the supply pack is like an S tier backpack. Point being, if you get extra charges of these stun grenades, you will find them extremely useful, and they will be, once again, just amazingly useful when you find different builds with it. I was even kind of theory crafting a turret build where I can stun enemies so that they don't rush my turrets, like bugs, for example. Because, you know, when you throw down an autocannon sentry and a tiny little bug walks up to it and it shoots that little bug and then blows itself up. Well, if you could stun enemies to keep them back and let your turrets go to work. Also, stopping breaches, stopping flares, like, and this gun has a short enough use time that it feels really impactful by only being 1.8 seconds. And just one downside to that fuse time is you can't actually throw this thing like uber far. Like, you can throw it to medium range pretty much. If you try to throw it long range, it'll explode halfway and not actually stun what you threw it at. And that is a downside worth mentioning, but it's not a downside that makes this grenade bad. This grenade is freaking amazing in my opinion. All right, so next let's talk about the Localization Confusion Booster. And what this says is it increases the time between enemy encounters. Now, I've seen some conflicting reports on this. I'll be honest with you, I don't know exactly what it does. I've seen people say that it makes patrols spawn in slower, breaches happen slower. I'm not sure which one it is. And so honestly, I'm not sure about this. I don't know where to rank it. I would say if it makes patrols come in slower or if it makes breaches come in slower, it is pretty dang useful. And I will say I've been running the defend missions with my friends like all weekend pretty much. And there was one game where I turned this off and all of a sudden we got 18 Bile Titans and I was like, what is going on? Is Joel affecting our game? And while that is extremely anecdotal data, I don't know. It felt like it did have an impact. It is really hard to say. And I would honestly just love to see a data miner come and tell us exactly what this booster does. But if it does what it says it does, it's a pretty strong booster in either case. If it's working properly, I really can't tell you guys if it is. And finally, let's go ahead and talk about the arc resistance armor. Now, all of the armor in the new Warbond gives you 95% resistance to arc damage. And honestly, all I'm gonna say about this armor is it's obviously very niche. It will only come in handy if you are using Tesla towers, if you're using arc throwers, and you can make some pretty fun meme builds of your whole team doing just that. And when you're doing that, it is pretty dang handy. Now, obviously you will still take some damage, you will still have to pop some stems, but you can kind of sit inside of your Tesla tower and just shoot down enemies walking towards you. It's kind of fun and it's pretty funny. And honestly, I enjoy items like this that encourage you to build very niche builds. Now, obviously this is not an S tier piece of armor. This is not even an A tier probably, but if you're making a full-on arc build, you can actually do it and get some good usefulness out of it. Now, it is pretty noteworthy that the Tesla Tower is actually pretty strong on the bug defend missions right now, and they probably knew that, and they probably released this armor at the perfect time. So I'll just stick this armor into the niche tier. I would say in a full arc build, it's pretty A tier, it's pretty good. You could definitely get some usefulness out of it, but obviously it's gonna be niche, guys. So that's all my thoughts on the new Warbond. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comment section down below. If you have any tips on how to use this Blitzer or any clips or any videos, join my Discord and post them in there and share them with me, and I'll try this gun again. I honestly want this gun to feel good, but it's just so underwhelming to me. I really think it needs some sort of buff. And that's going to be it for the video. So like I said, please be sure to drop a like on this video so it'll spread to other Helldivers. And be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications if you want to catch my live streams and come play with me sometime. So I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out.